And today, what I'd like to tackle is a text, a story of a Jewish philosopher of the early 20th century by the name of Franz Rosenzweig. And he, looking at his life, really inspiring as he was in a process of, he was a secular, integrated, well-educated young Jew in Germany. And the thing to do at that time, especially if you were part of the intelligentsia and, modern person, was to convert to Protestant Christianity. There was a lot of pressure at that time. Intelligent people Jews were pressured, were challenged to convert to Christianity, as Christians at the time felt that that is the source, the true source of the intellectual ferment and creativity of the time. And they made also very rational academic claims about to be a true intellectual and be a true German and be part of the Uber culture of that time. One really needed to reject whatever other ethnic or religious path you may be connected to. And in fact, a lot of Jews at the time did follow that pattern and converted, became Christians, became good Christians. And here is a story of a very inquisitive, very smart Rosenzweig, who in his exploration of Christianity starts to rediscover in a very deep way, in a very intellectually honest way, value in the tradition, his ancestral tradition, which he had no real connection with, as his family, as I said, were not a practicing Jewish family. And what he, through this incredible process, he offered us what's called the Star of Redemption. And I'd like to discuss that. It's from a book called Credo to a Modern Kabbalist, right here. I see a little glare. I want to give you a good picture of it. So Credo to a Modern Kabbalist, written by Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi with Rabbi Daniel Siegel. Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, the late, may his memory be of blessing, and my colleague and friend Rabbi Daniel Siegel, who lives up in Canada. So let's jump right into the text. It's a beautiful description of this process of Franz Rosenzweig, and here we go. Franz Rosenzweig wrote a very special book called The Star of Redemption. How he wrote this book is itself an incredible story. He began to write it from the Balkan front during the First World War, where he was serving with an anti-aircraft unit of the Tsar's army. Can you imagine writing a very deep philosophical treatise on army postal cards while listening for the sound of attacking airplanes? It is said that he wrote portions of it on these postcards, which he then sent home to his mother. The bulk of this complex work, however, was written after he returned to his hometown of Kassel. Rosenzweig sat there at the front, having these high thoughts, which he needed to put together because he could see that the world was falling apart. He needed to make sense of the world he was watching disintegrate. And I have some empathy for that experience. Although we're not at war, there's something about a disintegration that it's for me it's hard to miss, and I would guess that for you too. So Rosenzweig's experience is apropos to our experience in many ways, and let us continue. In 1913, the year before World War I began, Rosenzweig had considered accepting Christianity. By the time he had become an accomplished philosopher who had already written a critique of Hegel, Rosenzweig and a cousin, Rosenstock Hussey, had made a pact to look for truth. By the way, looking for truth is one of the definitions of the core of Jewish tradition. Titen emet leYaakov, Jacob or Israel is the forefather from which come the 12 tribes, etc. So Jacob, who is the progenitor, the source for the Jewish people, is considered the archetype of truth. So seeking for truth is really, you could say, the nucleus. It's at the core of all the Jewish enterprise. And here's Rosenzweig and his cousin making this pact. They're going to look for the truth. But the truth had to be truth that was not merely philosophical. It had to be something to which they might devote their lives. Knowledge by this time in Rosenzweig's life had to be in service of humankind. He also told Rosenstock Hussey that he had one personal reservation about accepting Christianity. He could become Christian only if he remained loyal to Judaism during the period of preparation and up to his moment of baptism. In effect, he was checking out Judaism while he was also checking out Christianity. On Yom Kippur in 1913, Rosenzweig found himself in a traditional synagogue in Berlin. From the moment that he came into the shul, or synagogue, he reportedly felt that the people gathered for Kol Nidre were actually facing a being. He really felt that he was witnessing something. He wrote that, and this is a quote, "Anyone who has ever celebrated the Day of Atonement knows that it is more than a mere personal exaltation, in parentheses, although this may enter into it, or the symbolic recognition of a reality such as Jewish people, open parentheses, also this also may be an element, close parentheses. It is a testimony to the reality of God which cannot be controverted." Rosenzweig then made a personal commitment. He began to read and to learn. When people would ask him, "Are you practicing this mitzvah? Are you keeping that observance?" he would answer, "Not yet." He was slowly becoming more observant, and each step of the way, the mitzvot he was observing were teaching him. That's a very interesting observation. The mitzvot were not dictating him, were not commanding him. The mitzvot were not getting a grasp, a hold of him. The mitzvot were teaching him. What an interesting, beautiful nuance. For all of us, for me, for you, imagine doing a mitzvah not as, I have to do this out of loyalty, I have to do this out of obligation. That too. You know, obviously there's a sense of obligation to God, obligation to the Jewish people, a way of framing my identity. There's so many reasons for doing mitzvot. But to do a mitzvah as, let me do this mitzvah so it can teach me something. What is there for me to learn from this act, from this observance? Beautiful. Rosenzweig was not orthodox in the sense that orthodoxy asserts that revelation denies history. Revelation denies history. Or in other words, this is a fancy way of saying in the sense of blind faith. He accepted the fact that the Torah was a document that reflected human vicissitudes. The documentary hypothesis was, for Rosenzweig, not a bad hypothesis. At the same time, tradition insists that Torah is the word of God, and so Rosenzweig came up with a very beautiful and simple answer to this very perplexing question. So the documentary hypothesis says that the Torah is really a collection of 4 different documents by 4 different authors. There's a P, there's a J, there's it's escaping me right now. There's 4 different authors. P are the priests, J is the Jehovah's, whatever. It's an academic sort of a splicing and slicing of the Torah. Some of us take offense by it because the Torah is our holy book, and we don't want it analyzed and dissected in that way. But yes, there's a logic to that. It's a literary analysis of the text of the Torah, and one can't deny that it has merit. And Rosenzweig found a way to accept both, to say, no, the Torah is a whole. It's a whole in the sense of being mystical, of being unique, of being sacred texts, and it can also be seen through the lens of literary analysis, and he was comfortable. He was able to live with both. Even if a human being did sit there with a scissors and glue and paste it together, a J document and a P document, this process is no less God-directed than thunder and lightning on the mountaintop, says Rosenzweig. For the Torah to be the Word of God does not necessarily mean a process as stiff as one word at a time dictation, God to Moses, to Moshe Rabbeinu. The miracle may lie just as much in the fact that the Torah came together in such a way that its teachings are enduring, that it speaks to succeeding generations in an enduring way. And this is a very important insight. So Rosenzweig was saying, it doesn't really matter if the Torah is the word of God dictated, written by Moses, or perhaps as in some reference in the Torah it says it was written with God's finger. And it doesn't really matter if you accept that as truth, as fact, or fiction. It doesn't really matter whether the Torah was really written by 4 different authors, the J and the P and the 2 others. He says what matters, what makes the Torah sacred, is that it endured. That is the miracle. That is the godliness, as it were. The fact that the Torah has endured as a potent, intense, spiritual, ethnic, cultural, moral, intellectual, nuclear core, if you will. So he's recognizing that. That's what it takes for a piece of literature to endure and to have that power for 3,200 years, if you want to go by the maximalist view. That's the value Rosenzweig is intuiting, is finding in his philosophical explorations of the truth about Torah, God, and Judaism. Rosenzweig related very strongly to this approach. He began to see in his contemplation where this might lead. He did not have writing paper. The only supplies available to him were the army postcards in which he needed to write in very small script to get any amount of real thought down. So he thought through his ideas very carefully before writing it in order to condense a great deal of thinking onto a postal card. What a great exercise, right? It's like he didn't have the luxury of just going on and embellishing. He had to be really laser clear and precise, and that is the kind of work we got from him in the Star of Redemption. So let me continue. what he began to see was a triangle in which each point was one of the words which I asked you to think about before. Obviously, I jumped into a little bit into the middle of the book here, and those three words that this book is actually going to explore in depth are, there are actually 10 words that this book is going to explore in depth. These are the first three. So those are God, Torah, Israel. And Rosenzweig is recognizing that this triangle, if you picture a triangle, and each point of the triangle, one is God, one is Torah, and one is Israel. And what he claims is that those three are part of a one. They're really points of a triangle. You can't separate them in any meaningful way. Or you can't understand any one of those without understanding the two others. Rosenzweig saw that there is a single reality which, when confronted from one angle, we call God, from another we call Torah, and from another it appears as Israel, the people of Israel. But the being itself is God-Torah-Israel. Right? So it's a God, Torah, Israel. God, Torah, Israel. Just one thing, one Zeitgeist, one Gestalt, one phenomenon with 3 points. God, Torah, Israel. Fascinating. How is it that we can know something about God? This is a rhetorical question. We can know how God has related to us. We can know God as God manifests in our own history. We can know how God relates to us. That's personal. We can know how God relates to our history. And the name we give those manifestations is that what we call Torah. So God, Torah, Israel becomes 3 dimensions of one being. Okay, so we have our history, we call that Torah. We have our peoplehood, we call that Israel. And we have the way we relate to God, our own spirituality, and that's what we call God. That's more the, I guess, philosophical, spiritual, intuitive. And then he continues, it gets more interesting. So we pictured one triangle, which is God, Torah, Israel, but there's another triangle, and it's an upside-down triangle. And here we go. At the same time, there are 3 functions which operate among those 3 dimensions. There are 3 functions in that triangle of Torah, God, Israel, and those 3 functions are creation, revelation, and redemption. And taken together, they form the second triangle. Creation, revelation, and redemption. Each of these 3 functions is fundamental to how we Jews, the people of Israel, understand and relate to God and to Torah. Let me read this again, because it's starting to get a little complex here, but it's beautifully complex. So we have these 3 functions. Creation is first, revelation in the middle, and redemption at the end. You see, it's a full process. It's the beginning, it's the middle, there's some knowledge, there's something opens up, and then there's a conclusion, which is redemption. And these fundamental functions are how we, the people of Israel, understand and relate to God and to Torah. You see that? So this is part of how our 3 points connect, is through the process of 3 functions. They are in our davening all the time. That is in the prayer book. Our prayer would not be worshipful if those functions did not run throughout what we're saying. In Mariv, in the evening prayer, and in Shacharit, in the morning prayer, the first paragraph is about creation, mentions the creation of the world. The second is about revelation, which is the giving of the Torah. and directly after the Shema, we speak of redemption. And redemption is, the end of days. It's the world to come. Now, we may argue whether redemption is Mashiach is an actual person, or Messianic times, or what Mashiach will look like. Will Mashiach come riding on a white horse or white donkey? Is it not? I mean, we can slice and argue and debate the substance, but just get the directionality here, right? So there is a vision, there's an aspirational, there's a utopian vision that everything in this world and everything in our lives as a Jewish people is leading to a hopeful, redemptive, a good ending. And that is in the prayer book. These two triangles together form a Magen David, Star of David, which is also Rosenzweig's Star of Redemption. Incredible. The pattern of creation, revelation, redemption is one of those deep structures about which it is our purpose here to ask questions in order to discover a contemporary credo. And we're going to wrap this up soon. It's a really beautiful early 20th century philosophical insight. You could also say prophecy by this unique teacher who is, his life's career is as an academic. He becomes a philosopher. This is his discipline, and he becomes a professor of philosophy. And through his sharp tools of intellect and his own discovery and re-engaging with Judaism, he explains it to us. He takes the concepts of Torah and the practices of Torah and tradition and puts it into a whole new framework that renews Judaism for our time, for the 20th century. So we're grateful to Rosenzweig for that. What Reb Zalman will continue to do, and Reb Daniel will do in the book here, is they will offer a third triangle, which comes from the Mishnah from earlier times, and this is the Al Shlosha Devarim Ha'olam Omed, Al Torah, Al Avodah, Al Milut Chasadim. The world is established according to the Mishnah in three pillars. So again, you see the triangle with the 3 points, and that is on the Torah, on divine service, avodah, and on milut chasadim, on acts of loving kindness. In other words, it's social justice work, ensuring that our world is functioning properly. Where all people are taken care of and people are interacting with one another on the basis, on the foundation of kindness and compassion. And then Reb Zalman will add a 10th point. So we have 3 triangles and then a 10th point, which is the covenant. And the covenant is the most, the covenant between God and Israel, which is the most religiously and philosophically complex and also crucial. It is really the only one of those 10 elements that is completely unique to the fabric of the Jewish enterprise. This is what holds us together as Jews. All the other 3, the 3 triangles, or the other 9 points, can be both Jewish or universal. They can be, opened up to be very inclusive or closed to be a little more particular. So there's a range there, there's a spectrum. But with covenant, there's really only one covenant between God and Israel, and this is at the core of what holds us together. So this was a little discussion of a framework in our time to look at Jewish identity, and a Jewish identity that fits in a world that's a global village, where we can be both unique, both us, and also universal, interactive, and dialogue and connected with everyone for the benefit of the whole of our planet Earth. Baruch Hashem. So may we be blessed that this exploration will bring us coherence and heal the confusion that sometimes I have, you have, about what is this whole Jewish project about. So we can really have a Torah that fits for us. It's not just a Torah of times past, but it's the Torah of what is alive at this time today. With that, we're going to conclude, and I'm Rabbi Reuben Modik with Makom Halev Community in Nyack, New York. Beautiful day here in Nyack. I'm looking out at the lush green trees outside the window, which is behind my camera. Also with Hebrew Learning Circles, our very unique educational system. If you are in the New York area, I invite you to drop a note. If you're not in the New York area, drop a note too. But for those of you who are in driving distance, also drop by. I would love to hear your comments. Please comment down below. Let me know, what did you get from this lesson? What is most important to you as a Jew or as a seeking Jew? I'm assuming that you're a seeking Jew. I just assume that every Jew is a seeking Jew at some level. So I'm teasing out the seeker in you. If if that's necessary at all, tell me, what is Jewish identity for you? How do these three triangles or any of the points work for you within this scheme of 10 points? And let me actually repeat them. The first triangle is God, Torah, and Israel. And the second triangle is creation, revelation, and redemption. The third triangle is Torah, divine service, which means prayer, but could also mean any spiritual work, anything that brings you closer to your spiritual self or spiritual destiny, right? So it's divine service. Again, the triangle here is Torah, divine service, and acts of loving kindness or social justice work. And the very last 10th point is the covenant between God and Israel, that which makes the Jewish enterprise unique. Again, comment below. Let's continue the conversation on below. If you are, please like us, and if you are watching on YouTube, I invite you to subscribe to our channel, Hebrew Learning Circles YouTube channel. There's many more videos with discussions of different topics on Kabbalah, identity, and meaning. And with that, we're going to say goodbye. So shalom, and wishing you a blessed day.